So you want a guard in the first round? I have just the names for you. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day every single day. It's Town Hall Tuesday, so hashtag everydayers, you know the drill. But if you're new here, that means I'm answering your questions, and later in the show, I will respond to your hot takes as submitted to me anonymously via the Google Doc, which you can find in the show notes to this episode, any episode of this show, whether you're watching on YouTube or any audio listening platform. Just scroll down to the description. The first question I'm going to take today comes from Christian, who asks, a lot of analysts seem to think that Tyler Booker isn't on the Vikings' radar because of his lack of elite movement skills, but you seem to disagree. Could you go into a little bit of depth on that? Somebody else, like a lot of people wanted to ask about Tyler Booker in particular. And look, Tyler Booker as an option at 24, very much in play. Definitely a name to watch. The Vikings run a zone scheme, and some people think that Tyler Booker isn't a fit for a zone scheme. I think there's two main reasons for this. One, his athletic testing was bad. Bad 40, bad short shuttle, even like bad bench, like a lot of bad tests. And so the idea that we have gotten used to of Vikings offensive linemen is that they are high athleticism, that they all did well in the tests. This will not matter nearly as much. It has not mattered as much to Kwesi as it did to Spielman, so that's one thing. But also it's the idea, hey, they run a zone scheme. You need fast linemen for a zone scheme. He's not a fast lineman, therefore he's not a fit. The second reason is that Alabama just didn't run a lot of zone. They did a ton of gap stuff, a ton of duo. They had maulers. They had them all. So you go, okay, is he played in a different style of run scheme, plus with what they were doing with Jalen Milroe, like a lot of like inverted veer kind of stuff where, he could like bumble down the field. So, okay, does he not fit? So my deal on this is I want to get a little more granular, right? What does zone ask a lineman to do that Tyler Booker cannot do? While he's not the greatest 40-yard dash, that's not what linemen don't run the 40-yard dash on a play-to-play basis. They have to scale up from, the first level to the second level of the defense. They have to pull. Well, whenever Tyler Booker pulled, to me, it looks totally fine. And that's less of like an athleticism underwear Olympics thing as it is a footwork and technique thing. His technique is good. So I don't really, when I watched Tyler Booker, and I even like everyone is saying this, so I even went back and I was like, am I wrong? And I was like, no, I cannot find the rep where he's like too slow and he doesn't get to somewhere that like it's reasonable to expect him to get to. There are a lot of plays, and you'll find this on any guard's tape, where he'll have to like climb up to a backside linebacker, right? He'll be on the backside of a run play and he's got to climb up to that linebacker. Well, that linebacker shoots out of their stance over to the play side and you'll never catch him. But there's never a lot, like if you're, lined up directly on that linebacker and he has a shorter distance to run than you and he's, 50 pounds smaller than you, he's always going to win that race. Show me the one where he's like, where Tyler Booker has a head start and still loses just because he's slow. And if you want to see, guards that don't move, I would point you to, say, Charles Grant, the William and Mary guy. That guy doesn't move. All right, that guy's slow as heck. I just don't see the issue with Tyler Booker. I know it's maybe not a satisfying answer, but I guess I just don't agree that that's an issue, right? Like at its fundamental premise, I think his movement skills are fine, and therefore the rest of the argument is like addressed there. Nolan M asks, all I've heard for weeks is that picks 10 to 50 are more or less similar value. If Kwesi were to trade back, should we be expecting to lose on all the trade value charts? So typically when Kwesi has made a trade, he is like won on some of the charts and lost on some of the charts. His chart seems to be in the middle of all of the other charts. He talked about it. He says he has a chart that he built himself. So he has his own that we don't get to see or know. But we can learn about it by comparing it to other drafts. He has been willing, I think, to take less value if he feels like the board warrants it. So he will, overpay to move up to move up to 17 if he feels the 9th best player is on the board. Or he will accept a deal that's got less value to move from 12 to 32 if he still feels like he can get the 20th best player, that kind of thing. And agree with it or disagree with it all you want. I could see Kwesi being kind of uniquely positioned to be the one that actually gets a deal done because he's willing to accept a worse one even as the market kind of downturns. He's still going to take it, in a way that maybe other GMs would be a little more reticent to do. And you can decide if you're happy about that or not. But yeah, I do think that that's a decent guess. But hey, on the night, we'll see how we feel about it. We'll put it all through the trade charts and see if that's right. Max says, I listened to the NFL Locked On mock draft and heard you select Malachi Starks. Yeah, so the Ultimate Locked On mock draft is a yearly tradition we've been doing for years now, that we all 32 Locked On hosts get together and do a mock draft representing our respective teams. Trades are allowed and everything is there. And I picked Malachi Starks. I don't really like Malachi Starks anymore. And Max is calling me out on this. He says, you've talked about how you don't think he's fit. You don't like him at 24. What went into the selection process during the mock? So a peek under the kimono, if you will, the Ultimate Mock was recorded weeks ago. And I kind of got my final take on Malachi Starks like days ago. So basically, I understood him as the chalk player. I had looked at him a little bit. I didn't see anything totally crazy. No, I didn't have any like super spicy hot takes. So I went, all right, I'll go with the chalk guy. Basically, my process, I tried really, really, really hard to get a big trade down. I got about within inches of a big trade down, but ultimately the deal fell through. So I kind of just panicked and took the guy that was like the most chalk, and figured, okay, I'll just do that and move on and try to take the most uncontroversial person there. And only well after that exercise did I like rewatch Malachi Starks come up with problems. You can go to my Patreon page, patreon.com/LukeBraunNFL, and you can see examples of the problems that I have with Malachi Starks. But yeah, you're just kind of seeing things release in a different order than they were filmed. And I learned stuff over the process, but I have no problem being like super open about that. Beta Meech asks, what is your process in assigning draft or round grades? To be more specific, what do you factor into account when determining the difference between a 4th round player versus a 7th round player? So I have this sort of loose guideline for what round I'm going to put somebody in. What do I expect from a first rounder? And I think this is a thing that everybody should do individually. But when I ask myself, what do I expect from a first round pick? I think that guy should somehow change the texture of his unit. It doesn't need to be, Justin Jefferson change the entire world, but a first rounder should be like Anthony Barr, right? Anthony Barr changed the way people game planned for you. He gave you a skill set that you could game plan around. The existence of Anthony Barr had an impact on the strategy. That's what I think you need out of a first rounder. Of a second rounder, I just need you to start. You can be just kind of a ho-hum. You can be Harrison Phillips, right? Just a starter that starts. He's not changing the texture of everything you're doing, but I want you to start. Third rounder, I want you to get in. You don't need to necessarily be a starter, but I want you to rotate. Fourth rounder, for me, I want you to make the team all 4 years of your contract. If you don't do that, that's pretty bad. And you should contribute in some way, whether it's rotating in a little bit every once in a while, whether it's being a high value backup, like a backup quarterback, or even as like a Brian Asamoah, special teams, Ty Chandler, special teams ace kind of guy. I would, as a fourth rounder, like Kenny Wong, who was a fourth rounder, being the kick returner really helped make that not feel quite as bad, even though he could never get in as a running back. For a fifth rounder, I want you to make the team for 3 of your 4 rookie contract years. And be a backup. Basically, I expect you to be depth, but I expect you to make the 53. Sixth rounder, I want you to make the 53 eventually, but you don't have to do it right away. Seventh rounder, I'm happy if you make the 53 at all. That's, I guess, where I'm at. So when I'm watching a player and I'm going to go, man, like one of the first questions I ask when a player is like a day 3 guy, right? Okay, this is not a starter. This guy's a backup. And then I start asking, okay, is he going to make the team? And if the answer to that is I don't know, or I don't feel good about his ability to make the team, like Deion Walker is somebody that I didn't even put a 7th round pick on because I don't think he makes a team right now. And if I can't guarantee, like if I can, not even guarantee, if I don't even feel good about your odds to make a team, I'm not spending a draft pick on you. Somebody like Omar Norman Lott. I don't think he starts right now. I'm crazy low on him compared to consensus. I'm out on that island and I'm okay with it. But I think he just gets cooked in the preseason to the point where you consider cutting him maybe. I put a 6th on him. I think maybe he can make the team. If he hits the weight room, he can make the team next year, but might be stashed on a practice squad, or the Levi Drake Rodriguez, you're stashed on a 53, but you don't actually play ever kind of guy. And for me, yeah, that's like a 6th round pick is that like that would meet the expectations of a 6th round pick. That's kind of my process. I've got more stuff about O-line, as well as some very, very good questions about pass rush and draft philosophy in general. That'll be next on Locked On Vikings. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by Gametime, the best place to find last-minute tickets. If you are looking to, say, go to a basketball game soon, at perhaps an arena named after a large retail chain, you should check out Gametime. The thing about these playoff series, when you don't know if there's going to be a game 4, you don't know if there's going to be a game 5, you kind of have to deal with it last minute, and Gametime is like totally built for this. Their last minute deals can even save you up to 60% off as people just try to get rid of their tickets at the last minute just to get something for them. Gametime can manage that market, maneuver through it, and pass the deals on to you. Save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, or whatever. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Moving right along with the Locked On Vikings podcast. Thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day. The next question I'm going to take comes from W, who asks, you talk very highly about the Georgia IOL, and why are they all ranked lower than Booker according to consensus? You seem to have mistaken my praise for somebody as a comparison to somebody else. I have Booker over all the Georgia guys for sure. Oh my God, yeah, that's an easy eval. So I'm definitely in with consensus on that. And in fact, when it comes to a lot of the interior O-line, I've actually gotten more in line with consensus than I am with like the safeties or the D tackles. I've found myself pretty in line on Booker, on Donovan Jackson, and on all the Georgia guys. But I love the Georgia guys as 3rd round picks. Jared Wilson is probably the best center in the draft and might be falling just based on like positional value and not being like a far away standout player, but he's a good center. And I think he's going to have a career in the league, right? I really like Tate Ratledge. He was right guard for Georgia. He was just hurt a lot. And so that's going to sink his value. And then there's Dylan Fairchild, who I think like down to down, he was the guy that impressed me the most, but he doesn't pull. It's wild. Anytime they want to ask a guard to pull, like it's counter or power or whatever, they would take him off the field, or the funniest one, they would actually switch him he was left guard. They would switch him to right guard and move the right guard to left guard so that the left guard could be the one pulling, which is such a crazy tell, right? Okay, as soon as 53 moves, we know it's counter. They were willing to tip their hand that bad just to prevent this guy from pulling. So that's like a gigantic alarm bell red flag that takes me from saying, I think you can be a starter in this league to, I don't know if you're going to make it, kid. So I don't know what to do with that. I ended up putting him in the 4th round because, hey, teaching somebody to pull is not an impossible task. And if you can kind of get rid of that problem, then suddenly you have a pretty good guard on your hands. And to me, that read as a 4th round. So that's where I have him. But I have Ratledge and Jared Wilson above him. But Tyler Booker and Donovan Jackson, to me, are 1A, 1B in this class as guards, and you're not going to find a whole lot of people that disagree. That's a pretty like consensus agreed upon opinion. Josh asks, when it comes to pass rush plan, how specific do they get, both from the team level and individual level? I know each player is responsible for a certain gap most of the time, but are they told which pass rush moves to use, or is that strictly up to the player? Great question, Josh. So there's two layers to it, right? The individual and the team level. I'll talk about the individual first. There's a clinic that I was lucky enough to watch with Bryson Allen Williams. He was the D-line coach at USC at the time. He's working for Georgia now. And he described it like a baseball pitcher. And I loved this because it just immediately clicked. So a baseball pitcher will typically have their three, typically, okay? But they've got kind of three pitches in their arsenal, and then everything else is gravy. You've got your fastball, your curveball, and your changeup, right? So think of it that way. You've got your fastball, you're going to go to that one most of the time, right? That's going to be your sort of bread and butter, your fastball. And then your curveball is going to be the other one you do that sort of subverts the fastball. And then a changeup that just is something wild that you can throw in as you keep the guy on his toes. I think that's a great way to think about it. So what's your fastball? Okay, my fastball is, say, the RIT move. Okay, that's a great fastball. I think it's a really nice, versatile move. It beats all kinds of different shapes and sizes of tackles. Okay, great. So you're going to do your fastball 80% of the time. Your curveball, okay, well, what beats a rip? Well, if they try to go super low because I'm dipping under them, maybe a swim, I can swim over them. Okay, cool. You do that like 15% of the time. And then the other 5% of the time, you do something totally wacky and off the ball, maybe like a spin move or maybe a two-hand swipe or whatever you think it's going to be. Every pass rusher is different in the moves that they're like the most comfortable with. But that's one thing that I'm always asking with D-line is, what's your fastball pass rush move? What's your go-to thing? On the team level, pass rushes are typically constructed. I think a great unit to watch to get examples of this is A&M this year, because they got 3 draftable players there, and 2 first rounders, and Shamar Turner, who's a pretty good player too. I'd be really stoked if he ended up being a Viking. He's more like a mid-round guy. But typically, you're going to have a lot of players doing like a dirty work. So usually you're going to have 1 or 2 players playing contain, especially in the college level where every quarterback can run. Somebody's playing contain. Usually one of your edges will play contain, but it's all about angles. So like Nick Scorton, he was basically always instructed to rush at the quarterback's outside shoulder or upfield shoulder. Make sure that he has to step up into the pocket, and then you hope that your defensive tackles have pushed that pocket and you can put him into between a rock and a hard place. Shamar Stewart played a lot of contain. He did a lot of get your arm on them, get yourself situated so that if he goes to your left, you can go that way. If he goes to your right, you can go that way. And, you can rack up a whole bunch of sacks that way as he tries to take the only thing close to an escape lane and you're guarding it. And then Shamar Turner was actually tasked with getting the penetration. Everybody had their little role. And, any number of those roles can turn into a pressure if you just beat the guy bad enough, right? But everybody's got their priority thing to worry about. What you got to do is figure out who has the two-way go on a given pass rush. Who can go one gap or another, and that's the guy that can jab one way and then get across face and go the other. That's the guy that can get really, really, really tricky if they have access to both gaps to work with. It takes a little bit of speculation for sure, unless you have the playbook for that team in front of you, which I'm going to guess you don't. But that'll tell you a lot about who the team really thinks is their dog, right? If you watch the Vikings pass rush, the two-way go belonged to Jonathan Grenard vast majority of the time because he was the dog. He was the dude. Van Ginkel played a lot of those contain roles, a little bit more of the dirty work stuff, plus his stuff in coverage. He had a different role. Very valuable, definitely the thing. But, you've got your Nas Reeds and your Alexander Walker types, and then somebody's the Anthony Edwards. Somebody is the thing that is the guy this all runs through. That was Jonathan Grenard for the Vikings last year. Who that guy is will tell you a lot about those respective prospects. James Kunow asks, the last question we'll take before we get to our hot take part, that'll be next, who asks, how do you think we should weigh our personal evaluations of players versus consensus when critiquing teams draft choices. Using your thoughts on CJ Weston as an example, you'd be happy with us taking him somewhere late day 1/early day 2, despite his consensus being early to mid day 3. Yeah. So for those who don't know, CJ West is kind of like my draft crush. I have him irresponsibly high. He is like the 109th player on the Reefs consensus board. I think he's way, way better than that. And again, that's just me on an island. So I think you have to do that. So my approach to this, because this is a year that I am in particular way off the reservation versus consensus on some of these players. And so look, I am not the smartest football mind you're ever going to hear from. Okay. Tons of smarter people than me on TV, tons of smarter people than me also doing podcasts. I'm not going to be the guy that has the best opinions, right? If I thought that about myself, I'd be insane. So acknowledging that I am way off on consensus, I think I probably have a responsibility to tell you when I'm talking about a guy I'm really high on to mention, oh, and by the way, consensus super disagrees with me. Take that as you will. You can come party on this island with me. You're welcome to. But now you know what you have to know if you are going, I don't know, maybe that podcaster isn't right about this guy and I should go with the wisdom of crowds instead. And you can go make that decision. That's kind of my approach to that. So if the Vikings took CJ West in the first round, I personally would be like, that's so real of you, Vikings. I love it. I think that was a good use of resources, but consensus was super low on him, and you probably didn't have to spend that pick to get him. If you wanted CJ West in purple, you probably could have waited till 97. And that would be the way that I would describe that move. And, vice versa, the other way around. There are some spicy takes coming up next on the Locked On Vikings podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV. Hey, did you know that your Fire TV also turns into an Xbox? You can turn your TV into a gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. You don't need that big old bulky console. So if you are maybe going over to a friend's house and you want to bring it over, you just need to bring the Fire Stick and you will be good to go. Just pair it with a controller and an EA Play or Xbox Game Pass Ultimate account, and you are good to go. You can play College Football 25 from EA Sports, Call of Duty, whatever it is, just as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's a total game changer if you're trying to have a party, or if there's a party that you're going to that's at someone else's house and they don't have an Xbox, but you have a Fire Stick. Bam, you got it. You're good to go. Head to amazonfire.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. Moving along here with the Locked On Vikings podcast, it's time for your spicy, hot takes. You have confessed these to me. Some of you were anonymous. Some of you forgot to be anonymous, and I will be anonymous for you. But the first one that I'm going to do comes from Geoff Sounds Nice, who says Minnesota should re-sign Kirk because it would be funny. Go Lions. Thanks, Lions fan. So I'm glad you brought this up. It's the draft week, okay? I'm not talking about Kirk Cousins too much in a draft week, but in case anybody saw something from Adam Schefter yesterday and had some questions, let me catch you all up. Adam Schefter penned an ESPN Insider article with a whole bunch of scuttlebutt about the draft throughout the league. And part of it was a whole write-up on what the Falcons are looking at in terms of trading Kirk Cousins. He said that they're trying to find some teams that they're, willing to take on like 25 of the 45 million. They might have to take on 35 of the 45 million if other teams aren't willing to do it. And he said, no matter what the team is, they probably only want to take on, $10 million, whether that's the Vikings or the Steelers or whoever. And that was the only message, the only mention of a specific team that Falcons could be negotiating with. My understanding is that Kirk Cousins would love to be a Viking, and the Atlanta Falcons would love to deal him to the Vikings, and that, the Vikings brass loves Kirk Cousins. They would love to have him back in the building, but they're not going to do something stupid about it. But looking at that contract, I mean, look, Atlanta's in like a total albatross, right? Like this is a disaster of a contract to get rid of. There's 45 mil guaranteed that is not going anywhere. The only way to get rid of it is to trade it to someone else, but nobody's going to take that trade until they converted all the signing bonus and take it on themselves anyways. So it's catastrophic. They're going to have to take a huge dead cap hit or have a ridiculously expensive backup. Those are their two options. The way the contract is set up, it's functionally impossible to trade him before June 1st. There would just be too much dead cap, especially if they have to take on more money. They would have to cut and restructure $40 million worth of players just to take the penalties on, just to get rid of the guy. And that's, forgetting about how you're convincing someone to have a $20 million backup quarterback and giving you a draft pick for that privilege. It's a disastrous situation. I would not be surprised to see Atlanta actually give a pickup just to get someone to take the contract off of their hands. It's horrible. But once you pass June 1st, and that means that because there's 3 years left on the deal, 2/3 of all of the dead money from that trade would be moved into 2026, making it way easier to deal with. You can plan for that. You can figure that out. But that would make it work under the cap space the Falcons have now. And then you can kind of start negotiating. So whatever happens with Kirk will not happen till June 1st. And if there emerges more serious reporting about it, we can talk about it in May comfortably, easy. So we don't have to spend time on this during the most exciting, any more time than we already have during the most exciting week of the year. Peppa Pig's inevitable future says J.J. McCarthy is going to be more Trey Lance than Brock Purdy this season. He will be injury-free, but won't be a god. To explain, I don't say this as a J.J. hater, but as a pushback is those who said he would definitely have made the Super Bowl based on college ball where the opponents are slower and he only played a preseason game where he was injured. I have no idea who you're talking about there, who said the Vikings would have definitely made the Super Bowl with J.J. McCarthy. I don't think I've ever heard that take. That feels like the kind of take I would see like elsewhere in this mailbag, to be honest with you. But yeah, sure, okay. Being more Trey Lance than Brock Purdy is wild because Trey Lance was dreadfully bad and unrosterable. I mean, Trey Lance shouldn't make a team right now. Hasn't been able to beat out Cooper Rush and that level of quarterback ever in his career. Brock Purdy is a starting level quarterback. So if you're saying that he's going to play unrosterably bad and that's your hot take, all right, cool. I respect it. Nate Jelson said, great job anonymizing yourself. All right. Nobody's going to be the wiser, Nate. Says the Vikings should not draft a safety all of this year, but they should trade down for 2026 capital. This will hereby enact phase 1 of Operation Get Caleb Downs. I love where your head's at. I don't know the first thing about Caleb Downs. I just know he has a reputation of being this really good safety. He plays for Ohio State, and everybody says he's supposed to be some blue chipper that's going to go top 5 next year or whenever it is that he declares. Great. Love it. Hope he doesn't get hurt after you do all that stuff to line yourself up to take Caleb Downs. Hope he doesn't like blow out his ACL and then suddenly you don't feel good about drafting him or whatever. But all right, sure. The Vikings should not draft a safety at all this year is a take that I am 100% on board with. I don't think that class is very good. Spicy or Jack says, regarding the quarterback class, this draft feels similar to 2022. Fans will be reminded of that draft when Kwesi trades down 6 to 8 spots and drafts Andrew Makuba, passing on the opportunity to draft Starks and or Emanwari. The problem is, I'm going to like it if they do that. If they pass up on the 2 safeties I don't like as much for a safety I like more than those guys, trading down and getting a better player, I'm going to be really thrilled about that. But that has more to do with my evaluations of those specific players than it has anything to do with like parallels to 2022. Ryan says, NFL media and fans have gotten too in the weeds during draft season. Hey, you're probably right. No one is a qualified draft expert in comparison to entire scouting departments and coaching staffs in the NFL that actually make selections. If you like your coaching staff and GM, you should just be excited for whoever they draft because they are not drawing a name out of a hat. If they've earned that benefit of the doubt, I think that's actually perfectly fair. I don't even know if that's that hot of a take, but they have to have earned that benefit of the doubt. They have to, have a reputation for drafting and developing all the time. I think the Vikings got that reputation a little bit, where like so much of their talent was always homegrown. They always had this handful of homegrown players that they had signed to second contracts that were these core pillars, and they were always drafted by the Vikings. You had, for every Antoine Winfield that would show up on a second contract, or Linval Joseph, you had like 3 Stephon Diggses, But yeah, I think generally, look, I don't want to like vilify people. It's fun to play pretend GM. We just have to remember that we're playing pretend GM and that they're working with a lot more information. They know a lot more about, for example, the injury concerns of players that you and I can only really speculate on or go based off of like whatever rumors are kind of going around, whatever's leaked out of that. But they have like real information on that and they can make more informed decisions. But what I will say is, NFL front offices are sort of in just as much of a crapshoot in a lot of ways. Nobody's really consistently perfect at the draft, and there is so much uncertainty to it that how you play through that uncertainty becomes part of the strategy. And yeah, it's really fun to discuss all that, but I think I'm with you in the world where like NFL media that goes like, this guy's the guy, it's like Mel Kiper. I don't trust you about that anymore. You know what I mean? Like I definitely get that. And I think as somebody who has been doing that for 2 months, y'all shouldn't trust me either. You should either trust your own eyes if you want to take your own crack at it, and, more power to you, or just understand that like sometimes stuff's gonna be wrong. Sometimes stuff's gonna unexpected stuff is gonna happen. Guys who weren't supposed to be good are gonna be great, and guys who are supposed to be, the safest pick in the draft are gonna flail out. It just happens, and you just kind of have to understand that a whole bunch of unexpected things are going to happen and like not forget that nobody knows anything. Kevin, not that one, says Jalen Milroe is a better running back prospect than Ashton Shanti. Okay, look, I don't know too much about Jalen Milroe. I didn't have a lot of reason to go deep on the quarterback. So you're going to have to look elsewhere for your like super informed quarterback takes. But yeah, Bama did a lot of running. Jalen Milroe is a pretty good running back. I think Jonty has a lot more burst, right? But Milroe's like a really good athlete, even among running backs. But I don't know. Somebody else is gonna have to take that one on for me. Somebody who's just put my name. It's Luke Braun says CJ West is the best D tackle in the 2025 draft class. Okay, I see whatever you're doing, whoever you are. I wouldn't be surprised if this was Kevin, but that's not my take. My take is that it's Kenneth Grant, and I do have Kenneth Grant over Mason Graham. Still a hot take. And then I don't want to admit how high I have CJ West after that. Okay, I'm just going to move on to the last one, which is from Sloth, who says many people expect the Vikings to be the team willing/desperate enough to trade down for bad value due to a lack of 2025 picks and the GM's draft trade history. My hot take is that Kwesi will zag and trade up to capture that market inefficiency to get a player who they are really excited by. So is the idea that like the market is going to crash? So this is like people who bought a house in 2009 and got it for pennies on the dollar, right? So like the market for trade downs is going to crash so hard because nobody wants to trade up that Kwesi, the only person willing to trade up, is going to be the belle of that ball. Is that the take here? It's very big brain of you to suggest that. I mean, that is truly outthinking it with all kinds of mental gymnastics, and that's exactly the kind of thing I'm looking for in this segment. So hats off to you, Sloth. Great stuff. I will talk to you all tomorrow, maybe go a little more in depth on some of the high ranking guys. And then we have one more day and then we're in it. We're actually in it, and we'll see exactly what happens on day one of the draft. There will be a live stream that is simulcast on Locked On Minnesota Sports and Locked On Vikings on day one. And I will be solo in it on day 3 on those same platforms. But we'll also have, daily shows just like normal. I will see you all tomorrow. And as always, Skull.